the Fuji X100V. Now, I purchased this camera back in mid-December, but please don't take me as someone who jumps on trends or just jumps on things because they're super popular. Yeah, this camera is. But the reason I purchased this was not because of social media, but more so because I had fallen out of love of photography, of taking photos. Anytime I was trying to take a photo, anytime I was trying to get creative through photography, it just felt like work. It felt like a burden. My wife has even asked me, why don't you take more photos of our family, of the kids? Or why don't you have a better attitude when you're taking photos of us? And I would never say this, but it's because it was a burden. Not that my kids are a burden or taking photos of them, but anytime I brought that camera out, it just felt like more work. So long story short, having it a couple months now, no regrets at all. This camera is awesome, and I love it for a couple of reasons. And I really got to test it out because a couple weeks ago, my wife and I decided to take our family to Disney. And so while we were there, I, of course, got to spend some great time with my family and create some memories, but then also really get to just be creative with this camera. And as I'm talking, I'm gonna be showing you some images, some of my favorite ones that I took from the trip. Here goes. So a couple reasons why I love this camera, and of course the first one would have to be the size. It is so compact, so small, for me especially. I've got big hands, so it fits really small. It looks really small when I'm holding it, which is perfect. It helps me be a little bit more inconspicuous, helps me stand out a little less. It's really the perfect size because when we were at the parks, I was wearing a fanny pack, so I would just put it into my fanny pack with everything else I had, and anytime I wanted to take a photo, I'd just take it out real quick, take a couple photos, put it back, and then move on. This trip was truly awesome because usually on any trip that I take or anywhere that I travel, I am taking a camera body with multiple lenses. It was really nice just to have this camera, just to be kind of trapped at the 23mm or 35mm full frame equivalent, like focal length. Just challenge myself to be creative with that focal length, which is honestly one of the better focal lengths. My next really big thing that I love about this camera, it throttles you. I know that sounds weird, but when you're using this camera and you have different settings set into it to portray a different film stock, after you take a photo, it pauses and it has to store the photo. Here, you can see what I'm talking about here. So anytime I take a photo with a film simulation or settings changed in the camera for the JPEGs, it stores the camera. I love this because it helps me focus on the one shot, not the hundreds of shots. It helps me focus when I'm taking the one shot on the composition, on the exposure, on the lighting, on my shutter speed. It really helps me think through what I'm doing. I'm using this too because I don't want to do a lot of editing on the back end. I don't want to have to work a lot to use this. I want to take them and I want to use the photos. And I get to do that with this. I get to whip it out of my fanny pack, take a few photos, put it back in, move on, enjoy some time with my family. The only negative to this storing feature would be when I'm trying to take photos of my young kids and they can't look at the camera for longer than half a second. And if I really need to, I can turn all the settings off and then you can take faster photos back to back to back. The next big point of why I kind of chose this camera and some things that I looked into is because I've always wanted to shoot film and I don't have the time or the patience to do it. I'm just being honest. My brother is a fantastic film photographer. He's a fantastic photographer in general, but his film photography is next level. And I've always been jealous of him. I've always said, I want my stuff, my photos to look like that. And so another big reason why I went with this camera was because you can emulate different film stocks and they look fantastic, straight out of camera. Now, quick disclaimer though on the photos that you're seeing right now, the majority of them, I edited them. These were the raw photos that I edited myself. Yes, I had this camera set to saving both JPEGs and the raw photos, but on this trip, I had my camera set to the Portra 400 film simulation Problem is though, I did everything but set the white balance, which is extremely frustrating. I caught it towards the end of the trip, and I know you're probably saying, how could you not tell? How could you not tell that your photos were not warmer than they should be, or whatever? It is what it is. I caught it later, and honestly, I was probably gonna edit these anyways, just because I wanted to kind of play with these raw files and see how they worked. I'm also gonna show a couple of side-by-sides right now or sometime in the video of RAWs edited versus the JPEGs straight out of camera. They really look good. I wanted something a little bit more punchy, some more contrast, and I still wanted to look filmic. I added some grain, and I did a few other things to those files. So short note about the look here. I was, like I said, shooting in the Portra 400 recipe on the camera, but also to kind of help with that film look, I did also have the Tiffin glimmer glass on the lens to, yes, protect it, but also to give that kind of hazy glow look to it. I love my family, and why I say this in this video about a camera is because when I'm using this camera, I found that I can be more present. I can bring my camera out, take a few photos, put it away, and then just have fun with my kids, or talk to my wife, or have a conversation, or just walk in and be with them. I've found when I'm using other cameras, other mirrorless cameras, I'm either always thinking about what focal length do I need to shoot at? And then I'm also taking hundreds of photos. I'm just holding down the shutter and just hoping I catch a moment. And I've found that when I'm taking photos with this Fuji, I'm taking photos and I'm capturing more beautiful moments. I've fallen more in love with imperfection in my creativity, and I can't do that all the time. The blurry photos of my kids are more beautiful. All of them are more fulfilling to me because I remember those moments more with them. But you get the point. As I'll show you, some of my favorite photos from this trip were the blurry ones, were the ones where I took a long exposure and some things were out of focus, or I shift a little bit and you know what, it doesn't look great, but the colors were awesome and I love that. This is my first kind of really dabble into street photography. Going here and doing this was perfect. I've always wanted to get into it more, or just have a camera that I can carry around all the time with me and take shots just doing daily life. It was more than fulfilling creatively. I really do appreciate you watching. Thank you. Hope you have a good one. There'll be more content like this, more street photography coming out. At some point, I'll be shooting some stuff around here where I live, and then also more content in general, probably revolving around video. So thank you again so much. Have a good one. With how much I love this camera, I do have one small little problem. You can't put the hood on top of the filter because the threads don't work. And I know I probably need some kind of attachment. I would just love to have this hood on there on top of my filter. Really, because if I don't have this on there, if I don't have the UV or the glimmer and just have this hood on there, it leaves the lens and a few elements exposed. But also I just want to stack them and it looks cool. So if you have any advice, if you know of an attachment or anything like that, let me know. That'd be awesome.